This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching with today's video. This is the last part of the beginner quilt project that used the 9-patch blocks. Part 1 and Part 2 are shown on the sheet that we were using to follow. We're down to the last part. The quilting plan, binding, and labeling options. The two quilting ideas that I had for this block, this quilt, you can do even if you've used setting blocks in your quilt. One way to handle the squares is to run a line diagonally through the blocks from corner to corner. And you don't usually have to even draw lines on your quilt unless you just want to. I'd use a light mechanical pencil if you needed to, and then ran that pattern. And those you could run right through your setting blocks. The one I'm going to start with for this quilt is a double line. One line on one side of the seam, and then one line on the other. And when you look on the back of the quilt, either diagonally or with this pattern, it always looks really good. Alright, back here at the machine, going to get ready to start. Now you will want to think about the colors that you're going to use. If you've got something light, you could use white. But in this case, I've got sort of a yellow cream, so I've picked a light yellow for the top. And I thought, well, I'm going to do that on the bottom too. But when I turned the bottom over, I remembered this had that other green, and I was able to look in my collection and find something that was just perfect to use on the back there. And I'll probably use this for the binding when I get ready. One hint is to keep up with your bobbins, because when you start quilting, it's going to take more than one bobbin, and sometimes you don't want to stop. So I'll load 3, 4, if it's a big quilt, 5 bobbins. I put them in a little dish and the color with them, because sometimes I'm using colors that are very similar, and so I always know that this is my bobbin color for what I'm doing. So what I want to do, and I'm going to use a walking foot, but you can use a satin foot or you can use a zigzag foot, and it will work very well too. Now I'm not going to go into my green border. I was looking for my okay. And what I'm going to do, since I'm not starting at the very edge, I'm going to fix this that when I'm finished, I'll have a few knots to tie into the quilt. And you've probably seen this. I'm going to pull up the bobbin, and the little tail is right in there, and I'm going to pull that out. Usually, it's hard to grab it with your fingers, so a tweezer is super. And then I'm going to slide those threads to the back and leave them. Don't cut them off. Just leave them there. And then carefully look and see that you're right by your edge. And I know that when I come back, I'm going to have to take this pin out. It's pretty close, but I'll do that when I get there. And if you remember, I've got this pin, and I'm ready to start. And you got to remember, this material is going to be slick, and if you have some little gloves or little fingertips or something, you can wear those. And I'm just going to make 1 or 2 runs and stop. So I'm going to start. And you can see I left it on when I was doing my bobbin. There we go. And I want to share this too, especially when you have a bigger quilt. Make sure everything's out from underneath it. But it used to be they'd sort of roll it up, and I started doing that at the beginning. And then I learned it's so much easier just to take and push your material back over here, even if it's a wad, and then do your top stitching. But I can see I've got a pin coming. I'm going to pull that pin out. And I'm just going to run down. And the goal is to start in the middle, and then go to the next side, go down, go up, cross over, go down, go up, cross over, until you have this side done. And then then you would turn it around, start back at the middle. Now if you have used a spray on it, instead of pins. You could probably start anywhere and go, but even doing that, I would suggest that you start in the middle. Okay, and then I'm going to stop. I'm going to turn. Now I'm going to be turning all my fabric around. If you're at first, when you're just first starting, if you wanted to, you could knot off right here, go back up to the top and come down. But this quilt was not very big, so I don't really need to worry about that. So I'm going to just take and turn, and you can see I've got all my materials traveled around to the side over here. And I'm going to go one more time. And that leads me to the next hint, which is don't watch the needle, watch where you want to go. Okay? I know that sounds funny, but it really works. I saw that the other day. I'm just letting my eyes go where I want the needle to go. And I think it's probably your hands that get it going. And keep traveling. When we finish this piece, we're going to look at the binding, because this is self-explanatory now. And I will probably just go ahead and stop. I'm going to go ahead and end it so I can come back. Okay, we're going to pretend like we've put all of our stitching in the top that we wanted, and you've probably done a little bit of stitching on your sashing. You may have come across, if you wanted to finish it as you were going. All right, now I'm going to look at my binding. So I measure all the way around the quilt to see how far it is, and then I cut strips. Now you can either use 2 1/4 inch strips, or you can use 2 1/2 inch strip. I like to use 2 1/2, unless it's just something very little, and then I drop down to 2 1/4 inch wide. And I wanted to show you, this makes the nicest coming together of pieces, because you very seldom will have a piece long enough to go all the way, but sometimes you do. All right, and so this would be the front of my fabric. I'm going to take the second piece of fabric and I'm going to lay them right sides together. And at first, when I started, I always drew my line from there down to there, and you can see there's fabric hanging over. If you look, you can see that those aren't even. So now I'm going to take and I'm going to run that diagonal stitch, and sometimes I drop the stitch length down a little bit just to make sure I've got a nice joining right there, because what we have done is we've joined the strips instead of putting them face to face and then having them at the same place. And when you fold them, you're going to see these are going to fall at a different place, and then just cut off those little tags. Now, if I'm lucky, when I open it up, I've got the two fronts facing each other, and then open it up and finger press. Or you can take it to the iron if you have a whole lot of those that you've done and you want to do it that way. Then the other thing is you can take it to the ironing board. Take it to the ironing board and press it in half if you want to. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move to a little section of my quilt. And in this one, I'm just going to turn under a piece for demonstration here. There's several ways that you can end it. I won't be able to end today, but I can start, and I want to show you a neat way to go around the corner if you haven't done binding this way. And what was so funny, I always did it whatever I thought was the right way to do it. And I had seen people do this on the internet. And the other day I found one of my old quilting books, and it was from 2002, and there the lady had done this nice job with it. And I thought, gosh, I could have been doing that all these years. So now I've got my binding folded in half. I've started on a side, and I see that those seams that I made, no seam is going to come where I want to turn the corner, and that's really important because that makes it hard. I'm going to take and I'm going to run. On this one, I'm running 1/4 of an inch. And I want to stop when I get about 1/4 of an inch from the corner. And when I do that, I want to pivot. I haven't got it quite there, so I'm going to come and do another stitch. And I'm going to pivot. And I'm going to run my needle off the corner, if you can see right here, the very corner where I was going. So I'm going to lower that and come down. All right. And you want to cut your thread. Sorry about all that. And you can see how it came across and then went towards the point. Now what you do, and sometimes people just stop, but I found that really works nicely. That's going to help you to fold this back at an angle. The bottom is folded at an angle. And then I want to bring it back, and I want to bring it down over the angle. And I've got a nice straight line up here, and if it's not like you like it, then just start over, fold it again, and then pull that piece down. And we're ready to go down to the next corner. And we're going to just do this one corner. And I'm going to travel a little ways. Okay, and I'm going to stop. Now, I didn't mention this, but I guess you could see to help you see the corner, I went ahead and I cut off my batting. And so you would have cut all of your batting and your back fabric off to fit. All right, so now I'm ready. Now, this one I put the green on the front, so that probably meant I was going to hand stitch the back. But if you watch, you can see this corner. There's the corner. It's already taken, starting to look really good. So what I'm going to do is pull these over. And you can either pin it or you can use the clip. I'm sort of acting left-handed now all of a sudden because there it goes. Because I usually sew it on the back and fold it to the front. But we'll pretend like we're going to hand stitch this one, so I poke the corner out. Now on this side, when I lay it down, and then I lay the other side down, I get the other corner. And it may be that you fillet this side down first and this side. It depends the way that you're stitching. So then I'll have a nice side on the back and a nice one on the front with a corner like that. And they get better and better. Because I wasn't at the end of the quilt, I didn't get to how to join the edges of your binding. There are 3 or 4 different ways you can do that. And you can find that on the internet. And the last thing I wanted to talk about in the part most people sometimes forget to do or get too tired to do is adding a label. And there are several easy ways to do it, and some that you can make ahead of time and some you can make as you go. And I'm just going to quickly show you a couple of those. These were made with fabric sheets that I had purchased off the internet that were made for inkjet printers. And I have a lot of fun with that. Usually what I'll do is I'll make a half of a sheet. Then next time I can turn the sheet around and run it the other direction and get a lot of labels off of it. And they can be so simple. And a date, the thing that happens to me is that I've been quilting since the 70s, and now I'll pick up a quilt and I'll say, oh, what was I thinking? I don't have a date on it, even more than a label. So that's one way that you can do that. Another way is, of course, to use your sewing machine. The one on the top I've practiced a little bit with on my sewing machine. And then you can have someone, I did find a lady one time that did the embroidery and could make the labels for me, and they were really pretty. And then finally, the one that I was practicing on today that I think I'm really going to use, because I just finished the big hexagon quilt I've been working on. And this time I wanted to make sure that I remembered that I hand pieced it and that I machine quilted it and did the Baptist fan and then the date that would go on there. And one of the things that I really like, and a lot of people say don't use a Sharpie marker type, but this one is an industrial permanent ink by Sharpie, and I really have liked it because it's, and I practiced with it and played with it because I heat set it. I used it and then I ran the iron over it and heat set it. I rinsed it underwater. I ironed it again and kept going. And so this is the one I think it's going to go on that quilt. I'll fold the edges under and hand stitch it all the way around onto that quilt. So in these 3 videos, we covered the basic steps for getting ready to make your quilt. There are a lot of ideas out there. This is just the way I think about it and what I did for this particular quilt. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. Thank you for watching. Any notes that I think of that I forgot, I will have added to the description. If you found this helpful or fun, please subscribe and hit like.